Ladies, welcome to an unfiltered podcast on real, raw subjects because it's our time and I believe we've got to be ready. Y'all know I say this all the time. There's no such thing as getting ready. I'm excited to help you live your best lives now as respectable and respectful women because modesty, class, and grace is always right and in style. You're on the mic with Dr. Ace, the Global Mentor Coach, and today class is truly in session because we're going to be talking about a very hot trend right now. Women proposing to men. I'm joined by a very special guest, Mr. Horace Towns, and you're going to learn about him in just a bit. But ladies, come on. Is it really that serious? What we doing in these streets? For me, it's a no. It's just gonna be it's a no for me. I wish I would propose marriage to a man. I'm sorry, I'm a traditionalist in a lot of different ways, and that's just not gonna work for me. But we're gonna get into this topic, and I felt like with a topic like this, we need a man to weigh in on some of this nonsense. At least it's nonsense to me. So without further ado, meet Mr. Horace Towns. Welcome to the show. Tell the people who Horace Towns is. Tell us a little bit about you.
Well, good morning. Thank you for having me. I would probably say that I'm more of a local. I'm a housing authority commissioner in Riviera Beach, Florida. I'm also a developer. I'm a writer by trade, so I do a lot of writing for entertainers, and I'm also a consultant, so I do brand management
Wonderful.
for entertainers in the industry.
Look at that. See, we ain't got no, listen, look at that. Man, all over the place. Aren't you you also a comedian, right?
Yeah. I'm
See?
still a comedian.
Yeah.
I go out once or twice a year and get on a tour just for, just to have a little fun.
Yeah.
But I'm still a writer by trade. I like to write for other comics.
Right. Yeah. He's more of he likes to be behind the scenes, ladies, but he's doing the doggone thing. So when when I sent Horace the topic, he he was like, "This sounds like it's gonna be interesting topics." First of all, y'all, I went to elementary school with this guy, so y'all probably trying to figure out how I went to elementary school with this guy. So we know each other for a very long time, and so Horace is a PK. And so it's going to be, I really wanted to get his take as well because growing up as a PK, but also as a man, I think that seeing a lot of trends, especially in social media, in the era of social media, there's so much going on. And I think that has a lot to do with what we're seeing today. And then a lot of this gender role and gender identity stuff is playing a huge role in relationships and what we see play out. As Christians, and we believe the Bible from Genesis to Revelation. It's a bit different. And we realize that we understand the tactic. It's all meant to destroy the whole foundation of family as God intended it to be. But my show is not just about Christian. We're talking to women, period. And so I really just kind of wanted to get into this topic because I know for me, and I know there are other women who are traditionalists. Back in the day, it was probably maybe 1% of women in heterosexual relationships that proposed to men. Now it's up to like 5%. And it's not a new trend. We're like, oh, it's a new trend. This has been going on. I mean, 1% of women were proposing back in the day, and it's up to 5%. And so even as early as we can go to 2018, women were proposing to men. And there's stories that are out there, but one of the things that I want to ask you about is in your opinion, what do you feel has led to this new trend of women proposing to men?
Well, first off, I'm going to be controversial and say I don't think it's a bad thing. Mm-hmm. At some point, sometimes tradition dies,
right?
Has to die or evolve. But I was asking some ladies last night, and I told them about the show. And everyone's reaction was, heck no.
Right.
No way. Not me. Ain't no way
Right.
And I was like, oh, okay, because I didn't go into the conversation because they were adamant, like, no way. But I think the standards, I think we have to do recognize some of the media or manipulation by, what we see.
Right.
And I believe now, I will agree that there's a shortage of what women will say are good men.
Right.
And I think now most people or most females are more established than males.
Right.
So you have someone that has the car, she has the house, she has everything but that guy.
Right.
And, recognizing that it is, kind of
It's
shallow
it's
out
hard.
here for decent guys and whatnot.
Yeah.
And I know South Florida, no, but I know when I go up north, when I go to Atlanta, you have people that has it all except for that guy.
Yeah.
And I've been proposed to in my dating history twice.
Right.
And I kind of respected it.
Right.
I do respect it because at that point, you know what you have and what you do not.
Right.
So if a woman, proposes to you, you either say yes or no.
Right.
And you say no, it's over at that point.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing because you don't want to be in a relationship where you're just there and you go 10 years and, you guys don't end up being together.
Right.
But I think the trend has something to do with, that whole fairy tale, like, you're not complete until
right.
you're married.
Right.
And, gotta get out here and get it.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. I don't necessarily think that to me it's not a good thing or a bad thing. I think that it does at some point create a little bit of confusion down the road as far as gender roles, and we'll get into that in a moment. But I think that in seeing it increasingly more in the context of, like you were saying, there's a shortage of, what we would consider good men in relationships, whether you date outside your race or within your race, just being that availability. And yeah, women are you're seeing feminism is just huge right now. And and I'm not saying that it wasn't back then, but again, we have the power of social media. So everything is magnified and, on a different level. And so you have that whole point where, like you said, women went through this. I'm independent. I got this. I got that. And they're looking for someone who's either their equal or that can add value to that relationship. And in some of the articles and things I looked at, that's kind of what some of the women were saying is, why wait? I know what I want. I see what I got, And one of the articles was talking about Elizabeth Warren and her story and the fact that she proposed to her husband, Mr. Man. And they've been married for 39 years now, almost 40 years. And, it's really interesting just seeing those dynamics. And I'm like, they've been married for almost 40 years. That she was part of that 1% that was, and when a woman proposes to a man, it's really no different in that fear of no, because just like a man proposed to a woman, it's a possibility that she gonna say no. You know what I mean? And so it's not the argument of, oh, well, what if he says no? It's the same thing as when a man proposes. It's a possibility that woman gonna say no. I think it boils down. You really have to know your mate. You have to know the person you're dating. You can't be proposing to nobody and you've been dating them 6 months, expect them to say yes. This is not a TV show. You know what I mean? This blind dating. There's a show on Netflix now where you date, you don't see the person ever. They're all in these different cubes or whatever, and you're talking to them and you're getting to know them before you actually see them. And then in a promo, the one girl is like, "Ooh, I hope he's cute," because you're getting ready to be with somebody you've never seen. You don't even know, chemistry is there from a perspective of you having conversation and all that, but when you see them, if they mud duck ugly, that might be a little different. You know what I mean? So I think that there's definitely a lot of things that have led to the increase in the trend. Not necessarily that it's new, so much that there's an increase in the trend. So I want to ask you, as a man, since you said that you've been, proposed to twice, how did that make you feel? You respected it, but how did that make you feel? Did it make you feel awkward? Were you caught off guard? What was going on?
Well, I would say, first time I think I felt rushed. It was kind of off guard, surprised, and then it made me actually stop and think.
Right.
about the relationship, because that's when, as a man, I had, okay, apparently we're in two different places, because she's feeling like, we're at that place about marriage.
Right.
And I'm more like, I didn't even think we were at that point yet.
Right.
So it's a good moment where you have to stop and analyze the relationship and have that conversation.
Right.
Either I'm going to say yes, or we're going to have a conversation where it's no, and say, okay, we're not at this same location. And, at that time, either we're going to, work towards marriage, or you're going to stop and say, okay, we're not on the same level, and we don't want the same thing at the same time.
Right. Right.
So it can work. It can work, because, like I say, sometimes a lot of people date, and the woman's waiting to be married, and the guy's off trying to establish himself and all those things. But that moment made me say, okay, let me analyze.
Right.
Do we have a future? Do I really love this person? And so on.
I think you made some very good points here. One of the things is, if for nothing else, it opens up opportunity to have mature conversation about where you are in the relationship. Because, yeah, we've heard this before, and I've seen it all the time. And I really think it's true. Women do mature at a different rate than men. And the way we think is not the same way men think. Men need to be in a certain place. Like you said, if you're working on establishing yourself and getting to a certain point to where you can be who you feel you need to be to have a family and be married, and having a family does not mean children. A husband and a wife is a family. Please, y'all. But there are dynamics to that, because now where you had bills of one person, you have bills of two people, and there are different dynamics that come along with a family. And so just because that man says no doesn't mean that it can't lead to something. Like you said, it might just be an opportunity to have open conversation, and it's going to go one or two ways. We're going to make a plan to work together to get to that point to where we're both ready for marriage, or we just going to, like you said, we're not in two different places and part ways. Either way, I don't see the bad in the results of whatever the answer is. Some people say yes, and they drag that engagement on forever. Almost like it's like you should have just said no and said let's be maybe later on, rather than string somebody along just because it might be the possibility. No, I think it's more important to have that open conversation about where you want to go versus where you are right now. So
right. And I believe everyone has different definitions of what marriage is.
Right.
I think the biggest thing I've learned about dating and relationships, my definition of dating, courting, and relationship issues may be different from you.
Right.
I think that when you're getting into a relationship, get serious, you guys need to have every conversation. Don't assume, because you can get down the road into a relationship 5 years and say, well, I assumed, or well, I thought this would be the position that we take.
Right.
You have to have someone that you can, hey, if I was to get sick, would you pull the plug? If I lost my job, would you, hold the family down?
Right.
A lot of questions that you have to have. So I said all that to say, with men usually want to be a real man wants to be established,
right,
and be able to actually, put stuff on his back, be able to support that woman that he's, going to marry. I
agree with you there. I think that the big word you said here was assume. You can't assume nothing. When we grew up, you say you assume you make out of you and me. And I think one of the challenges is what you said, having that conversation and defining marriage. You have to define, as a man, one of the things women need to ask men is, what does that mean for you? What does established mean for you? Because established to me you might seem established, but to that man, he may not feel established. So you have to spell out, you have to ask that man to spell out, what does his life have to look like for him to be ready, to be at that point. And some men are very much into being that provider, whereas some are, it's a different day. They looking for women to be that provider. There's that gender role switch identification. And so from your perspective as a man, What are your thoughts on the gender role, the gender identity thing that we're experiencing and the impact it's having on relationships, especially as it relates? And I'm not talking about not only just same sex, but specifically as it relates to heterosexual relationships. How are gender roles and this new era of defying gender roles and blurring all of those lines, how is that affecting what we're seeing as it relates to relationships and going to the next level?
Well, I will say that that is one of the biggest problems, especially for African American families. Again, us compensating and trying to maneuver and manipulate something is causing issues.
Right.
Again, men, we're typically not on the same level as our mates right now, you know. But I believe that no matter the financial situation or no matter the situation, we've been taught that the man has to be the head of the household and the head of the home and the head in the relationship. And we're looking at things now where that's not the case.
Right.
And, some people feel like if you're not an equal contributor to the relationship, it's all about who's contributing the most and who, brings the bread to the table. And I think that is a problem because you do have relationships where that works for them.
Right.
Where the roles swap. I said, but I think overall that causes confusion, especially when you get into parenting and whatnot. It causes confusion. And I don't know how we're going to, I won't say fix it because it works for some people.
Right.
But I think in the mainframe, it's something that's bad, and I don't know. I don't know how to fix that. I think everyone's having unique problems.
Right. I think the key word is every relationship is unique and different. What works for one does not work for you. Here's the thing. You got to have conversation when you get to know people. I think we're so quick to rush in because, again, we see the persona on social media. To me, I feel like social media is the new club. Because when you go to the club, you ain't meeting that person. You're meeting their representative. When you're dating people, you got to dig deeper. And I think that we're in a hurry to achieve a goal. I got to get married. I got to do this by this, and this.
Right.
And that's not realistic. You put a lot of pressure on yourself and other people. And so I think this whole role, the idea of gender, gender roles and defying gender roles, some of it has to do with equality, but I don't know if we want equality so much as equity. And because equality and equity they kind of travel along the same lines, but there's some differences there. And I think that it's not so much about who contributes the most or the same, because there's going to be moments where he provides 80-20. Sometimes it's going to be she 60-40 because life happens. And one of the things you said that kind of sparked a thought to me was, when you're thinking about committing your life to somebody in marriage and preferably long term, can you trust this person with your life? Can you trust them to make decisions? This person gonna kill me for the insurance money. You know what I mean? Like, because this is real. This is stuff that happened. I personally used to work with a woman who married for money. And she was just like, my first marriage, I married for money. And yeah, it was great. But I was trying to figure out how I could get out of it. It's miserable. And, the next time she married, I said, I'm going to marry for love. But some people still marry for what they can get out of it. And ain't necessarily for relationship purposes. And I don't think that we're having those conversations, like long-term conversations that are long-term. We have short-term conversations because we live in a short-term gratification microwave society versus where it's long-term. I want to think about, hey, what's, you know what I mean? Like, having those conversations. Can I trust you with my life? If I die, like you said, if I'm on life support and I got a DNR, are you going to, execute that DNR or not? Like, what, you know what I mean? I think those are the hard questions that people don't think about. We don't like to think about those long-term effects. What if I get sick? You know what I mean? What if this happens? Because we see stuff happen in the news all the time. And people don't realize, you know what I'm saying, that life happens, tragedy is going straight.
Right.
And you got to see this person as, can I trust this person? Do I love them to that extent? And so, I want to ask you this question. If a woman proposed to you and you said yes and y'all got married, would that set a precedent or an expectation to you that she's always going to lead? I say that because when I mentor people, especially women in relationships, my young girls, I say how you start the relationship in the marriage is how you're going to finish. If you start off being quiet and docile and not having an opinion, don't be getting married and all of a sudden want to be mouthing all and this, that, to that, because that's not what he signed up for. I mean, that's the truth. Now, do people evolve and grow? Absolutely. But I believe you evolve and grow together. Don't you be this way and then and you turn into Eveline. That's not gonna work. So, do you feel that if a woman proposes marriage to a man, that then changes the dynamics of the family? And I know sometimes people think that they say, well, women really run the household and, men just provide the money and the women do whatever, but that's not partnership in marriage. But again, in some people's context, that is, you have to define it again. What works for you works for you. What worked back in the 40s and 50s and 20s ain't gonna work now. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, first off, in that equation, hopefully she gets a good guy, she gets a good man,
right.
Because if you propose to a dude who, some people could take that and run with it. Cut the fool. Hey, you wanted me.
There you go.
What? You proposed to me.
Right.
You wanted me.
Right.
And I can imagine that happening. But I think if you have a good guy, it just comes with some expectations.
Right.
If someone's proposed to me, I'm going to take it, and I am going to, kind of respect that. Say, okay, this woman loves me that much.
Right.
But it's going to come with expectations in the sense that when we get to the point where, things get tough, I'm going to be looking at you like, hey, we got married. You wanted us to get married. So I'm not going to expect her to be wanting to pull out, and leave the relationship every time something's going wrong.
Right. So
that would be my expectation as far as somebody proposed to me, and you might look for a little grace in the relationship.
Right.
Because if she proposed to me, who's to say that I was ready or at the same place she was at that time? But when you love someone, you want to make them happy.
That's good. Question to you: do you think this trend will lead to higher? I'm not gonna say high, but higher, because divorce rates are already high. Do you think it'll lead to higher divorce rates?
I want to be optimistic, but like I said in the prior conversation, it's all about the guy.
Right.
Because one thing about even a relationship, when a immature or weak man knows that a woman is crazy about him, we tend to act the fool.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because she's not going nowhere. She hooked. I got her.
Yeah.
And that woman that loves you gives you a lot of grace.
Right.
You know what I mean? And if that guy loves her, it can go a long way.
Right.
But as far as divorce rates, I think it varies. I think it's a fair question.
Yeah.
Because it's all about who the guy is. And I want to add something that's off. A lot of times, I always tell people in this dating era, the person I want doesn't want me because they want someone that doesn't want them.
That's true.
And a lot of times, the person is chasing the person that really isn't invested in them the same way.
Right. I agree with you. I think that also leads to, again, you see so much on social media and you're trying to mimic what somebody else has going on, or you're trying to be somebody that you're really not. And the person there you chasing, that's not the real person. That's their representative. You know what I mean? Eventually
Right.
that mask and all that stuff comes off. And I think what you just said goes back to something you said earlier about having like those serious conversations where you really uncover who this person is. You got to ask those questions, and we ask those surface questions, but we don't dig deeper. Like, okay, what was your relationship like with your parents? What was your parents' marriage like? You got to get into a person's background to understand why they are the way they are, or why they think the way they think, or you know what I mean, to understand that. And I think that also one of the things we see people as projects. Relationships are project. Oh, this is a good project for me, and I can turn turn this man into what I want him to be, or even some men, I can make this woman be my ideal person, rather than just doing the work to find the person that's already that person. Because now you gonna get frustrated when the person that you thought that you created is not that person. And now you know what I mean? You've engaged, you're married, and it's like, well, wait a minute, what happened? You created this Frankenstein monster because you put a little bit here, pull from this here, pull from that there. And whether that woman proposed to the man or it was the traditional man proposing to a woman, I think too, again, social media, we're attracted to what we see. And listen, when it comes to relationship, it is about what you see. I know personally, I want to roll over and look at something nice every day. I'm sorry. Like, I mean, just like a man want to roll over and look at something like, I do too. Women do too. I don't know why women act like, oh, I'm just looking for what's on the inside. Lies. That might be you. I want to roll over and look at some every day. But at the same time, if you open up your mouth and I'm like, okay, now I'm no longer attracted because you fine and all, but you real stupid. You know what I mean? And so let's get deep. You know, it's like you got to get deeper. Like, oh no, you really got some issues. You got some side effects that, you know what I mean? And I think that sometimes with some women and some of the comments that I saw in the stories that I've read about women proposing to men, one woman did so because her career is that she's in a male dominated industry. So it appealed to her to defy gender roles. It wasn't so much that she was like, oh, I knew that he was the one and I loved him and this is how he thinks and this is how I think. But to me, the root was, I'm surrounded by men in a male dominated industry. This is an opportunity for me to defy this gender role. And I saw kind of like that whole theme of women proposing to men as a means of defying that gender role, or taking the bull by the horns and saying, I don't want to have to drop hints. One woman said, I don't want to have to drop hints for the next year or so for him to get it. Why do you feel like you got to drop hints? Just have a mature conversation and say, I would like to get married someday, in the near future. What are your thoughts on that? Why is that so hard? I want to say
That's
that.
a good question. You know what? Two things. I would say a lot of times, you ever heard those stories where, it took the woman leaving for the guy to snap in?
Yep.
And then,
you don't miss what you got till it's gone. Yeah.
Yeah, and our minds are elsewhere. Sometimes we take you for granted. She's there, so I know she's always going to be there. I'm off trying to establish this or that. And a lot of times we do need you to be like, hey, we need to talk,
right.
And have that serious conversation about what's your plans. Now, you need us to know that it's serious enough where you're contemplating leaving. Not know, hey, when we're going to get married. No, hey, right now I'm looking at my life plans and goals. Right. And, this is marriage is something that I really want. That kind of serious conversation you got to have with a guy.
Right.
And I think that's good advice for ladies out there. Second round of advice will be this. Like we're talking about having those difficult conversations. Ask a person that you're dating. Go deep. Don't assume. Hey, have you ever been molested?
Right.
Hey, have you ever, even sexual relationship questions and whatnot, because those things do play a factor.
Yeah.
Later on in the relationship, someone who's used to having multiple partners or entourages, they're going to have intimacy issues.
Yes.
A guy that was abused by his dad or whatever by someone is going to have different issues. And those are the people that you're going to be having kids with. So you have to have those real deep questions before you say, oh, let's get married, because you like him. And I'm put this on women. Fantasy, y'all see a guy, oh, this looks like the one for me, right? And then you get to try to understand and find out who he is as a person. Guys, when we're dating or when we're in married mode, we look for somebody that's going to enhance our life. It might not be that serious for us. Hey, I can hang with her. We go out to dinner. Oh, she's laid back and chill. This one will come over and just chill out with me at the house. We don't be that. We look for different things.
Right.
All right. women, you guys will date for marriage. You guys are always looking for marriage. Sometimes guys are just looking for a companion.
Right.
While we kind of, look at you while we're dating you to see the qualities that you have.
Right. I mean, you unpacked a whole lot. You said a whole lot right there, because I'm serious, because again, you really touched on soul ties, and Jesus, you got to know what's in a person's history, because that's going to help you understand why they are the way they are when it comes to relationships. You got to find a person's triggers. What are your triggers? And have those conversations. The other thing is, don't be afraid of therapy. Even if you go to a life coach, you got to, and ask that question. Have you ever been to therapy? Would you ever consider it? Because if this person is not even willing to consider therapy or going seeing a life coach, that means they're not ready to deal with some stuff, or they may not deal with some stuff, and you gonna having conversations like those deep conversations, it's gonna be like pulling teeth. Then you got to ask yourself, is it worth it? Because you're not finna be in a relationship that's healthy and growing, and then that you're gonna have all these issues and different things, and one of the questions you definitely have to ask is sexual questions. Like you said, the menage a trois, polygamy, and swinging, all of this stuff is real. Experimenting with sex, and whether it's same sex, animal sex, because that's a real thing. A lot of this stuff is a real thing. Creating soul ties, creating all of these different things that really are triggers and affect people and how their ability to be in healthy relationships, whether you married or dating seriously. I think those are real questions that we got to be willing to dig deeper on. So the original point of women trending, or I would say the increase in women in heterosexual relationships that are proposing to men, I think this is going to be an ongoing thing, especially with feminism and everything we're seeing for gender roles and gender equality and all of this kind of stuff. But the question is, what does this do for the family dynamic? And it's something we have to think about, because is mom the mom and the daddy even when daddy's in the house? You know what I mean? And if that man didn't have a dad that showed affection, he's not gonna know how to show affection to his kids. Or if he came from an abusive relationship, whether it was physical or verbal or whatever, and never dealt with that. We got stuff that trauma is real, and a person's trauma is different. We living in a time when children are mass shootings at school is a norm, and if they don't get proper therapy, anything could be a trigger. And they might close themselves off and say, I don't need to get close to nobody because everybody around me going to eventually die because life is horrible and people are just going to shoot up the place. That's a real PTSD, and that can affect people having relationships. So I think the whole concept of women proposing, for me, it's a no, because I'm traditionalist. It's some things that I'm just a traditionalist. It took everything in me to ask a man out to go to coffee. Because I just, and I will say this, it's nothing wrong with inviting a man out, asking a man out on a date. Because I had a guy actually teach me this, and a pastor. He said, asking a man out is like letting him know that you're available and you're interested.
Absolutely.
Men have that same, just like you ladies, we be on our stuff like, oh my God. Men have the same type of fears that we do. Is that woman going to reject me? Rejection is real, but if that man don't know you exist, first of all, that man, you might be fine as all outside. He probably in his mind thinking, first, she may not be thinking about me, like you said earlier. The woman I'm interested in ain't interested in me, or she got a bunch of dudes on her, she's not available. That man ain't gonna know. He ain't rocket science. He can't read your mind. Just come out and say it. All of this dropping. I'm gonna tell you right now, I'm not a person that flirt very well. I don't take subtle hints very well. You just got to come out and tell me, because I'm direct. I'm a direct person. If I like you, I like you. If I don't, I don't. And so I'm not good at dropping hints like, somebody had to tell me, oh girl, that meant such. Oh, I don't know. Yeah. You got to come out and tell. Like, seriously, there are some women like that, and some are very subtle. Like, but you as women, put it out there. The other thing is how you put it out there. I think for men, it definitely means how you present. If a man is looking for a companion, there's a difference between a companion and a toy.
Right. But I say this to you and all the listeners. we do fear rejection, and especially in this new social media
Ooh,
trend where I might not see you face to face, but we're friends and we've had a chat here and there. And I go to say, hey, would you like to go out? Or, hey, can we have a phone conversation? And then you see a female, younger or immature person, put the whole message out on post. Oh, get out my inbox, stay out my inbox. We have those fears of that. But if you were to come and say, simple, hey, you know I like you. Or, hey, why don't you never, as a woman, say, hey, why don't you ever ask me out? That guy's going to know that, okay, she likes me. So now it's mutual, it's a comfort zone. You're like, okay, so the rejection is gone. But we definitely have a fear of rejection because we don't know. Everyone's different. So I don't know if I'm your type. You might think I'm overweight. You might think I'm too skinny. You know, that will go a long way. And a guy will match your effort. Be like, okay, she dig me.
Right. Yeah.
So do it.
Y'all heard it straight out of the man. Listen, straight from the man. Straight from a man's mouth. It's okay. Let that man know that you're interested. So that's it for today, y'all. I think this was a very juicy topic. I want to have Horace on again because I want to talk about dating in Me Too and how Me Too really affects men and the dating era, because I think the whole intent of Me Too has been skewed. I'm not going to get in conspiracy theories about, who's behind Me Too, but it's a real thing. And Henry Cavill, he plays Superman. There was he did an interview a couple years back and people gave him grief about it, but I really think that it's a real thing. Men are afraid to date in the era of Me Too because everything, and there's so many women coming out. One of Johnny Depp's exes just came out, a leaked audio of her basically saying she abused him. So we're seeing so much. I mean, we can go all the way back to Emmett Till, where women have been lying on men forever, and it's cost them literally their lives. And so I'd like to definitely have you back on and have that conversation, because for every Me Too story there's one that's not the truth, and it's affecting men, but it's also affecting the dating scene and how men approach dating and dating women and all of that kind of stuff, because I think it's important to have that conversation. I did an episode I think 2 years ago on Is Me Too Hurting Us, and I want to revisit that with a man in the conversation on how does that affect dating and relationships today, especially in the wake of the Harvey Weinsteins and the Bill Cosbys and all that other kind of stuff. I just, what's done in the dark comes to the light, but what's done in the dark isn't necessarily always what people say. Everybody has a different opinion of how it happened. You know what I mean? And so, so y'all, I thank you. Any parting words before we close out the show, Mr. Towns?
No, I thank you for let me come on. I think I'm a good man law representative, so I can speak on behalf of men. I mean, the next show will be good because I can tell you, as successful men they're full of fear right now because your image and your reputation is everything in business.
Yep.
So having someone not receive your flirtation, or even just being even courteous in this time is misunderstood as flirting. So
I agree.
That's going to be something. But I tell everyone, challenge today, go out and see a guy. Hey, that guy that you're thinking about, we got so much stress and things we're dealing with. Get on our mind. Say, hey, I like you, or hey, why haven't you asked me out? And because you don't want to wait around and you get the courage, he's with somebody else.
Right. That part.
Yeah.
That part. So the same thing you expect that man from, and you trying to get like he said, not available. That part. It happens. Again, talking about this gender and role reversal thing. It's the same fears women have, men have. And it's just about having those conversations and being at the table talking about what's, relationships, period. We talk about relationship goals. This couple that's been married 80 years may not be relationship goals, because the crap she put up with ain't nobody putting up with today. 80 years ago was different than today.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
A little tougher.
So thank you guys. That's all for today, ladies. You've been on the mic with Dr. H, Global Mentor Coach, and my very special guest, Horace Towns. Thank you so much for listening. If you have some topics you'd like to hear, or if you need a coach to help you achieve your goals, send an email to info@globalmentorcoach.com. That's info@globalmentorcoach.com. Again, thanks for listening. Keep it sexy, classy, and modest as you spread lots of love and light.